Hey, welcome to the Star Wars Unlearned podcast. My name is Josiah Shuett, and I'm joined by Nathan Hawley. What we're doing is we're looking at Star Wars from the perspective of its creator. So we're turning off our fan brains and really just trying to uncover the story that Lucas is trying to tell. We're in the middle of our series on the Phantom Menace, where we explore the filmmaking, the history, the mythology, and everything else that Lucas and his team used to bring this first chapter of the Star Wars saga to life. So join us as we dive in and unlearn what we have learned about the Star Wars story. Yeah, so I do want to go back real quick, and there's a couple things I missed in the last scene I'd like to talk about, because I think they're kind of important. And last time we talked about, well, the Force was brought up in a big way with Qui-Gon's conversation with Anakin about the Midichlorians and what that means for the way we thought of the Force in the original trilogy in the 80s and 90s leading up to Phantom Menace, and how it changed after that, and how a lot of people were confused as to what George was trying to do. How was he changing the Force? Was it staying the same? Who was it affecting? All these kind of unclear things. And so we talked about how that the midichlorians signify that you have a talent. That if you have a lot of midichlorians, it means you have a special talent. It doesn't mean that you're inevitably going to be better than everybody. You still have to train. You still have to get better. But
it's like skill level, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's like having aptitude. It gives you it's like an edge. Like, yeah, I have a knack for drawing, or I have a knack for, whatever. This person can play cello really well. Whatever it is, you can be really, really good at it to start off with, but you need to keep it up to actually become a master. Michael Jordan, was he a product of training or skill, or talent? It's both. Like he had an aptitude for it, but he trained super, super hard to get as good as he was. So with that being said, there is an idea I think that's super consistent in mythological stories that's kind of happening here, where the hero is often imbued from birth with a special quality that marks them as the hero. There's a lot of stories of heroes for whatever reason, like Spider-Man, for example, where they start off as a normal person. There's nothing special about them from birth, but then something happens to them. They encounter some mystical being who gives them power. Frodo has been given a ring. There's nothing special about Frodo. That makes him magical from birth. So there's that kind of story, but it's very common that you'll see a story in mythology and legends and fairy tales where the hero is born with something special. Or there's something special about their birth. And so Joseph Campbell, in that book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, that George Lucas read and referenced for Star Wars, there's a cool passage where he talks about that, and I just kind of want to read it here. He says, "The makers of legend have seldom rested content to regard the world's great heroes as mere human beings who broke past the horizons that limited their fellows and returned with such boons as any man with equal faith and courage might have found. On the contrary, the tendency has always been to endow the hero with extraordinary powers from the moment of birth, or even the moment of conception. The whole hero life is shown to have been a pageant of marvels, with the great central adventure as its culmination. This accords with the view that herohood is predestined rather than simply achieved." So there's like I said, the hero's journey the hero's story can kind of go two different ways, and this is clearly identifying Anakin as one of this type, where from the moment from his birth, there was no father. It was the virgin birth kind of deal, again, that comes from Jesus, and that very, very powerful, very, very old idea that our culture is very aware of. We know that signifies someone special. We know that person is a hero, a savior of some kind. And so that, I think George is absolutely playing on that idea on purpose. And so the whole midichlorian idea is another way of talking about this idea that he is special from birth. And I just thought it was nice to give some perspective. That's not just something George is doing. They just pulled out of the air. This is something that he's researched. Like he said, he read this book. He would have read this passage. And so he knows, he studied mythology, he studied anthropology. He knows this history of heroes being special from the get-go. And so a lot of people are bummed out that, so not anybody can be the great Jedi. It's like, well, everybody can be trained. Everybody can grow in the Force. But there's always going to be some people who have an advantage. That's just real life. And so, so that might be a harsh reality for some fans, I guess, who didn't always think that was the case. But to me, since George is since his priority is storytelling, he wants to tell a great story. That's why he's drawing on this. It's not just he's not doing it to make people feel bad or make people not like the fact that Han Solo can't be a Jedi or whatever. He's just doing it because it makes a better story. It signifies the hero as something special from the beginning.
Yeah. I'm honestly surprised. I don't, maybe it's just because I didn't grow up that era, but I never understood the controversy, Mm-hmm. In fact, I would not be excited if it was just, Han Solo one day was like, yeah, I just want to go be a Jedi, so I'm going to work really hard at it, and I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it does. Mm-hmm. It just seems to take away that special giftedness, this unique brotherhood, knighthood, and that's like everything. I mean, that's just kind of how life functions.
Yeah.
There are just certain people with different gifts, and we all have different gifts. None of us can do everything. So, and I don't know. That's just weird to me. I don't understand the controversy there, I guess. But maybe that's just me. I'm not a 70s, 80s kid, so I don't know. Maybe that's just something I missed out on.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just.
Well, I think the controversy kind of sparks from, again, like we talked about last time, but just a misunderstanding of what George was doing with this scene with the midichlorians, bringing that in, where he's not talking about the Force here. He's talking about something that is that communicates to the Force, that communicates the will of the Force to us. So it's separate from the Force, but it's connected to it. And so I think the controversy came from people thinking that the Force had changed, and that before it was something that was universal, that everyone had the Force and anyone could be a Jedi. And now it's like, only, DNA lottery winners who have a lot of midichlorians can do it. And no, the fact remains, George has said this many times, that midichlorians aren't everybody. That means the Force communicates to everybody. Everyone has the access to the Force. Everyone can use the Force, right. But only certain people can get to a certain level with it. So you could someone could train Han Solo to get to a certain point to be a jet, in the Force, but he's not gonna, defeat Vader or Palpatine or anybody like that. He's not gonna get to that level. So I think that controversy just stemmed from a misunderstanding of, they thought George was talking about the Force here, when actually he's talking about a separate issue, which is the biological communication, if you will, that we have with the Force, which is the midichlorians. We have with the Force, as if it's a real thing. I don't know why I said that, but
that's right. My connection to the Force.
Yeah, Star Wars fan going a little overboard there, Josiah.
Hey, that every single one of us has tried to open one of those electric doors with the Force, right?
Yes, it works every time I do it. I wave my hand and the grocery store doors open perfectly. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I derailed you a little bit, but
that was it. That was basically the last. It was just a little addendum to the conversation we had last time, and I thought it was nice to just show that it's not something that Lucas just kind of, again, pulled out of the air, that it's a very old tradition. There's a long history of these kind of stories, and it's a mark of the hero in almost every one of these ancient hero stories. So again, you can have your Spider-Man, you can have your like superheroes that get bitten by a radioactive something, or fall into a vat of chemicals and they come out and now they're special. And those stories are fun too, but this is just a different type, and it's just very clearly signifying what this is. And it's, again, a very ancient idea. George is always playing with these old ideas. So
yeah, it is pretty cool. Nice.
And I think one more thing I wanted to mention, because we don't talk about the music that much, and I always I want to keep bringing the music in when I can.
Yes,
is that the music in that scene with Qui-Gon and Anakin, I think, is really cool, because we've been, it happens here and it happens in the Jedi Council scene earlier, is that we start hearing this new theme that's been popping in here and there ever since we visited Tatooine. And and we've come to realize it's associated with Anakin. It's Anakin's theme. And this is just one big clue that, the fact that he has the most built out theme of all the characters so far in this movie that we hear, and we hear it so often, is a clue that he's going to be the most important person going forward. Because as you're watching the movie, as we talked about before, it's Padme's story. It's being told through the Jedi's perspective, the two Jedi. And then the main character is Anakin, but he doesn't come until later in the movie, just like Luke does. And so now we're kind of getting the idea, like, oh, this kid's important. Now we're focusing on him more. He's probably going to be the main character for this movie, at least, and going forward. And so I just like that when we first met him, he was just this other character along for the ride. Now it's become clear that he's the main character. So once Padme's story is finished in this episode, the story that sets everything up, the plot then shifts to Anakin for the next two movies.
Mm-hmm.
And Padme, of course, is involved in that. So I just like that the music is kind of is helping us make those connections now. Like, oh, okay, this kid is important because he's like the only character that has a theme at this point. Qui-Gon has a little motif. He has a small theme, and Jar Jar has a theme, but they're but yeah, the most built out, the longest, most fleshed out theme is Anakin's, and so the music is. If you're confused on who the main character is, the music is definitely John Williams is helping you out. So.
Man, wow. I mean, speaking of gifts and talents, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Gee whiz, that man.
Totally
amazing stuff. Yeah. It'd be interesting just to hear his thoughts, like if he just sat down and did a commentary on all the movies and just see how like it shaped his thinking and what he was trying to do. Because he's telling the story just as much as George is, I would kind of argue. Obviously different, but I mean, he's got his own piece of it for sure, telling the story. So yeah, I love the music. Always have. That's one of the things that struck me even as a kid, just listening to the music, just amazing.
Oh yeah, from day one, the music was one of your favorite parts. You'd love popping in the Star Wars CD, the soundtrack, listening to it. And yeah, it's cool. You say like that. John Williams, would be interesting to hear what he says, because he does give a lot of interviews about. I say a lot, but he's given several interviews on the scores for the Star Wars movies in the past, and I've read through some of them. I want to read more of them because I'm sure there are a lot of cool information, cool little bits of information in there. I know for sure there's pieces of information about the Duel of the Fates piece. He does talk about that. I found those, and so we'll talk about that when we get there, which should be pretty soon actually. Yeah. But yeah. So I'm excited to get into the music more, and so I just wanted to bring that up as well. Since we don't, I've kind of been neglecting the music to bring up the music in the last several podcasts. I want to try to more consistently bring that in because that's a huge, because we watch these with the sound off. We don't have the movies in front of us, so it's easy to neglect the sound effects and the music. But that's half the experience. It's using two senses when you're watching a movie. Your sight and your sound, or your sight and your hearing. And so I don't want to neglect half the picture. So.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, we haven't really even talked about sound effects. My goodness.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, like you said, maybe we'll have to do that at the end of each film. We do just, here's a music one, or here's the sound effects and music or whatever.
Yeah. That'd be a good idea.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So something like that. I love it. It's so important. So important. In fact, I've gotten so used to it. I can tell when Star Wars sound effects are in other movies. I don't know if you've ever noticed that.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, hey, that was the walker sound, or ooh, that's when that explosion happened. Yeah. I can.
Yeah, you can totally tell. Like, okay, Skywalker sound worked on this. Ben Burtt and his people worked on this for sure. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, just it's hard to think of like sound effects as being iconic. Like it's really hard to do. But every once in a while, you get movies like Star Wars and even Star Trek does it well, and a lot of sci-fi. They try really, really hard to sci-fi and space opera stuff. They try to create sounds we've never heard before, like Jurassic Park. The dinosaur scream. Everyone knows that, and so yeah, sound effects is such a fun. Sound design is such a fun part of filmmaking that I love to look into. But anyway, but yeah, that's
good stuff.
Little nice. Tangent.
Yeah, good. No, that's good. Great. So moving on to the next scene.
One last thing about this scene is, and I thought this might be this was kind of like, I'm not sure what this means, so I'm not sure what to make of this. So this is kind of an open question to you or anyone listening to kind of maybe give us some ideas here. But this is a quote from Lucas from 1999 when the movie was released. I think this is from the making of it. I can't remember exactly, but he says, the midichlorians have brought Anakin into being as the chosen one who will bring balance to the universe. Who will bring balance to the universe. The mystery around that theory is that we don't know yet whether the chosen one is a good or bad person. He is to bring balance to the Force, but at this point, we don't know what side of the Force needs to be balanced out. And I thought that was interesting because if you're watching the story in chronological order, there's a way of watching this where he says he's the chosen one to bring the Force back into balance. That could still be sort of it could be read as like an ominous thing. Like, oh, does that mean that these Sith, like these, because you have these two players, right? We've seen these two Jedi this whole movie and these two Sith. And then, so the question is this chosen one going to balance out which side, how's that going to play out? And of course we know this, I grew up knowing the story. I know how it ends. So I don't really think about that too much, but I realized like, oh, it's kind of set up, I think, to have that question, especially in Revenge of the Sith. You go, oh, I guess it's the Jedi that are going to get balanced out. I guess the dark side is winning, you know? So that's just an interesting way of thinking about it. So I'm not entirely, and that's just kind of how I read it, but I'm not entirely sure exactly if that's where he's going with this. I wondered what your thoughts were on that. I don't know, maybe if you'd heard that before or not.
I've not heard him say that. I've heard people say that. In fact, he's hinted at it in several, well, now I'm trying to think. I was going to say Clone Wars episodes, but I'm wondering if some of those are Rebels now that I'm thinking about it. But I'm somewhere along the line, I'm pretty sure this was during Clone Wars, at least like a commentary. I want to say Dave or George commented on this and said, yeah, the Sith have their own version of this prophecy of the Chosen One. I'm pretty sure that was George. At least like
I think that sounds familiar. I think you're right. I think it's in Clone Wars, yeah.
Because I know they delved into it in Rebels too, and Dave Filoni commented on some of this stuff, but I think he got that from George. Yeah, I could be wrong, but I do know that somewhere along the lines it came up shaping that story, either Clone Wars or Rebels or both, that the Sith also have a very specific prophecy for the Chosen One. In fact, I think Darth Maul says in one of those, man, I wish I could remember, but someone says to bring balance, or they're talking about the Chosen One, and he says to destroy, not to rebuild, like the Chosen One's here to destroy. And so that's interesting. And I'd be curious to know, I'd like to know that, because I do know George has said in the past, and he may have changed his views, but I know I've heard him say that balance means there is no dark side, right? The Sith are gone. That's when balance is achieved. Because like we've talked about this before, but modern day Star Wars, post George, they're trying to give this idea of like gray is the balance, light and dark together. But George always said, no, balance is, there is no dark side. It's gone. So he may have changed his views, but I remember seeing that somewhere on that. So have you heard of that or?
I think I made this mistake for a long time. And I think I want to correct you because this isn't me. Like, I think what I've heard George say is that, and I've been doing research on specifically what does balance in the Force mean, and what is that the Sith are gone. The dark side is always there. He says the dark side is always there in us. It's always exists. You can't get rid of it, but you can keep it at bay. And I think it's not like, so it's not exactly contradictory to what you said, and that's what I used to think. I think it's just specifying. It's just being a little more accurate and saying that it's the Sith that need to die because they're the ones who are abusing the Force, and they're the ones who are putting the dark side and growing it and making it more powerful than it should be. George is saying like you're never going to get rid of evil in the world entirely. You're always going to have bad impulses. You're always going to have evil thoughts. The idea is that you just can't let that win. You just can't let that take over. And so that's what the Sith represent, is the idea of that evil, that misery, that soullessness, that the death, that getting more and more powerful than it should be. And so, yes, I don't think it means gray. I don't think it means, that doesn't imply grayness. Like, you should have equally powerful light and dark, as if they're the same thing, that you could even weigh them on a scale. It's just that what bringing the Force back into balance means that the Jedi, it's what happens at the end of the story is when the balance is returned. That's when the balance is restored. That's when their Jedi return and the Sith die. There's still dark. There's still the Force goes on. The Force and everything, every possibility that comes with that of darkness and light is still there, but the darkness is put back in its proper place where it's not taking control over things. It's just it's sort of like, I don't know, it's his way of accepting like the reality of Lucas's way of saying, well, you're always, like I said earlier, I'm just repeating myself, but you have bad thoughts, you have evil intentions sometimes, but you can't let that overtake you. You can't let that take over. And that's on a personal level, on a society level, you don't want that to take over the society. You don't want that to take over the world. Because you can't get rid of it fully. Like you and I believe that one day it will, but it's not gonna be us who does that. And so that's kind of, I think, the idea that's happening here is that the dark side and the light side are part of the Force. It's not going away, but it's the manipulations of the Sith to grow the dark side's influence that needs to die. And that's and so that was a big shift for me because again, it's actually a small thing, but it actually has big repercussions. So trying to figure that out, and looking at his quotes from interviews and watching the movies and trying to figure that out. That's definitely going to be a big part of that Force conversation we have at some point, because I do need to do a little bit more research on that, because it's a little it's tricky, but but I know for sure I can say confidently, I've heard him say that it's not that the dark side dies, that the dark side goes away. The dark side and light side are always there. It's just that the Sith are the thing that needs to be balanced out. That they need to be destroyed, because they're the ones who are causing things to go haywire with the Force.
Okay. Well, we need to nail it down. That'd be good for both of us, for everybody, because it's just, how do we understand what George is doing here in this story? Because I've always been under the impression, I thought for sure, but now I'm really second guessing myself, that he said balance is just the light, but I don't know. I never really thought about just.
And it could be that he changed his mind a bit, or he clarified things later on. You're right.
Yes.
I should say that these are things that I've researched. I don't know exactly what the timeline of is of his thoughts on these things.
Right.
But
and I don't either. I don't remember when I heard that quote either. But I'm pretty sure he said just the light. And I'm pretty sure that was Clone Wars era. So that may have been
really
way after the fact, when he was originally thinking prequels even, or original trilogy, who knows. But it'd be good. That'd be good. I want to know, because I think that plays into this too. You and I have talked about this. Like, what would we do if we were in charge of the sequels era? What would that look like? And I was really bothered by this, how Disney took that prophecy of like the chosen one, where it's like, oh, this happens every few years almost, where it's like, oh, well, we got to bring the Force in balance 30 years later. Oh, it's going to happen again. It's like they open the door to like, here's multiple chosen ones. We just got to keep doing this. And for me, I'm like, I don't know if that's what George intended, but I don't know what he intended. So it'd be good to nail that down, and just hear from the maker's mouth himself, so that'd be good. I'm looking forward to that. That would help me a lot, because I'm learning this the whole way I view things is so off. And I just like, okay, I need to get to what George is trying to say here and not just my opinions. I think that would really help. But anyway, I don't know if we need to hash that out now by any means, but I think it is really important to think through, like you said, that Force balance podcast. That would help me a lot.
Yeah, I'm definitely not equipped to hash that out right now. And
me neither.
You're right. We should put a huge caveat on this, saying that what Nathan and I are both bringing to the table is that's what we remember. That's what we've looked at, and we don't know when exactly that falls in the timeline of George's thinking. But if that's the most recent idea he's had, or if he's been consistent with, we don't even know if his ideas have changed at all, or maybe it has been consistent this whole time. So big caveat, we're both coming to it with just what we've heard from him say, different quotes here and there. So when we get to that Force conversation, I will have those quotes with me, and I'll be able to figure that out at that point. But and it's interesting. Last thing I'll say, because I do want to move on. I keep getting us bogged down in these little side quests here, but you said about the chosen one thing. There's a quote from him in the archives book talking about his sequels, where he calls Leia the chosen one. And that is real. I'm like, what's going on? Like, cause it's like, wait, is there a different chosen one you said? So it's like, who knows what that means? And if, again, like I've talked about last time, who knows if, how he would change the story, because he's always changing things right up to the moment the movie's released and even after. So, so who knows? But that's just another thing with chosen one. Is that set in stone? Does it happen every generation? Or like, or there were just 1,000 years where there wasn't one for a while, or I don't know. So it's we'll get there eventually. But who knows? That's a big topic. But anyway, I just thought that quote was interesting, and so I thought I'd bring it up to prompt some good discussion, some questions that we'll need to investigate later. And I think it worked. So cool. Yeah, I got new things to research and new things to find out.
Definitely. That rocked my world too. When I read that, I was like, oh man, no way. Yeah. And this is why there's different denominations, right?
Exactly. Yes, that's true. There are many denominations of Star Wars fans.
We try to stick to the original source, but sometimes we just don't know. Yeah.
That's hilarious. I never thought about that. Denominations in Star Wars. That's hilarious.
That's right. Different Lucas denominations.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Anyway, good discussion, man.
Yeah. All right. So now we can, since I flubbed at the beginning and I forgot to go back to the previous scene, now we can start off with the Sith, the bad guys hatching their plan here. So now I will ask you the first question I asked you like a million years ago. What are your thoughts on this scene?
Yeah. Well, let's see here. I did find it interesting now that we've been talking about this past few podcasts, how this is set at night. You know,
yes.
Coruscant's at night, Naboo's at night. You know, the shroud of the dark side has fallen. Hopelessness is here. You know, Naboo's in the dark. It's just what a contrast to how it was before when we first were introduced to Naboo. You know, when you get that first shot of the palace and the city, and it's bright, sunny. Is that, you know? I mean, it isn't up in flames or anything, but it's at night. And instead of panning to the Queen in the sun, we get Palpatine in the shadows with the snakes in the palace. You know.
Yep.
So it's just what a contrast. Yeah, and that's just my observation. I don't know. I'm assuming that's really intentional for George, just like what we've been talking about. Just continuing that theme. We're still at the bottom, if you will, like hope is lost, supposedly. What else? I want to say I heard a comment, I think it was in the commentary, where George wanted to show like the scene here where Palpatine's walking around, or he's on that little like hologram with legs, the holographic projector with legs. Now he wanted to show that just to give them movement or something like that. I think that was kind of a cool thing. I remember as a kid going, wow, that thing's creepy, you know? So, but it seems to me, and again, I'm just shooting from the hip here. This seems to be another one of those shots that George does where he just keeps that villain story going, you know? We haven't seen the villains in a while, so he's going to throw in the villains for a couple seconds and then move back on. You know, he's really good at that. We've talked about that, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling right now. I'm just trying to think on George. I haven't actually studied this scene, so correct me, my friend.
No, you've said everything that I was gonna say. I'm so proud of you. You're starting to think like a cinematographer and a filmmaker. Hey. I've trained you well to notice, because the first thing I was gonna say was that it's in darkness, right? So every time we've gone back to Naboo since the Queen left. Every time we go back to Naboo to check in on the bad guys, it's always been nighttime. It was daylight until the invasion. Until the invasion was successful, and that's when the Queen fled, and so now it's been darkness and chaos ever since.
Wait, it's been nighttime ever since they left? Like every time you've seen Naboo?
So remember the time where the governor was walking along with Newt Gunray when he's on the chair that's walking by itself, and he's like, take him away, and the droids we're searching for the Gungans, searching for the underwater villages that take place at night as well.
Whoa! And then I did not realize that.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So when the bad guys show up, it's always going to be dark and in some sense, or nighttime. You know, we've seen the Trade Federation in scenes before that. They weren't actually in Naboo; they were still in their ship. That's when Darth Maul was introduced, right? But it's a dark room, and the stars are out, and it's the cold vacuum of space. And so, but when we go to Naboo, it's been dark and and nighttime, and you know, there's a creepy feeling. But as soon as the good guys come back, we're in daytime. It's the daylight. So again, that's just that visual, very simple but very effective visual storytelling. So even if you don't really know what the dialogue's doing, if you're not really following that visually, you get the sense that light has returned back to Naboo. There's hope again. So
have we? Wow. Okay, that's blown my mind. Have we seen a scene with Palpatine hooded and cloaked in the daytime at all in this movie?
Nope.
Not a one. Wow. I had never realized that. I mean, we see him Senator Palpatine, right? But not robed Emperor Palpatine. Wow. Wow.
The only time we've seen him in person is in that quick scene with Darth Maul and Coruscant.
Yeah. And it's
that's
at
nighttime.
Yeah.
And every time he shows up in a hologram, up to this point, it's been dark. Now we do see him in a hologram during daytime later on when they're planning when Darth Maul's there with the Neimoidians there, he tells them wipe them out, all of them. That's during daytime, but again, he's not there. He's the ghost, so he's not actually there. And that's when the Gungans are amassing their army, and the fight to restore the light is already happening. So
yeah, I was gonna say, but the heroes are back, right? The light's back.
Yep.
Wow, that's so cool. I had never realized that before.
Yeah. Oh, well, you picked it up though. I said you took the words out of my mouth. The first thing I was going to talk about was the darkness.
Wow.
Because it's such I'm such a visual person. I love telling stories visually, like cinematography. I love that stuff. So just studying that in these movies has been really informative.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, I never realized that every single one of Darth Sidious, I should say, is in the dark, except for that at the end. Wow, that's so cool. I like it. That's amazing. That's wow. Show don't tell, right? I mean, that's
Exactly.
George said, like, I tried to write these as a silent film and use dialogue when I absolutely had to, because I want
Yep.
everybody to see it, not just hear it. I don't want to hear it. And we've talked about that before, how like Star Wars books, like they're fine, but Star Wars is a visual media,
Yeah.
and it's just so critical. But wow,
Mhm.
like I had a friend of mine who thought that George made the movies off of the books, and I was like, no, no, the books came from the movies.
If you read Star Wars, if you hadn't seen it, all you did was just like read the novelization of A New Hope in 1977 when it ever came out, you'd be like, what is it? This is weird. I don't know what a Wookiee looks like. I don't know what any of this stuff is. I don't know what's happening. It'd be a really weird book to read. It wouldn't do well, but as a movie, it's fantastic. So
can you imagine? I mean, like talking about sound effects, just this, iconic sound effect, the lightsaber, right? Or Darth Vader breathing. Like, that's such a visual, audible in that sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so critical to it. But anyway, I don't want to get us off again. But anyway, it's really cool. It's really cool. I like that. It's brilliant.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I love that he did that. And it's good that you brought up the silent film idea, right? Because it's, that he's using these ideas. Like, there's a reason that movies existed before there was sound. There's a reason people watched silent. People didn't just wait for the ability to make sound before they made movies, because they realized they could tell stories very effectively with visuals, just without any, with just music and some sound effects here and there, like played live usually. But
moving pictures, right?
Exactly, movies. That's exactly. And so that's so it's so cool that George is he knows his film history. He knows that this art form really, really well, and so he's going to use every part of it. He's not going to just assume, it sounds a given, and dialogue is a given, that needs to be important. It's like, no, I need to make sure that I'm beefing up the visuals. That's really what this is. That's what makes this different from a book. A book has dialogue. A book has narration. So does a movie. But only a movie has visuals and moving images like this. That's something. So you have to do something with that. If you're gonna make a movie, you have to be. You need to be. Why? If you're not gonna make the visuals interesting, then just make an audiobook or write a book, or do something. So anyway, it's a good point. But the script is important, the dialogue is important, and I do want to jump into that.
Absolutely.
So here's a bit of the script that didn't make it into the movie. Says so Newt and Rune stand before a hologram of Darth Sidious. Darth Sidious says, "The Queen is on her way to you. I regret she is of no further use to us. When she gets there, destroy her." And Newt says, "Yes, my lord." So now we know for sure that he wants them to kill her, because it was kind of vague. It's kind of, I think there was a line. Oh, I'm going to forget now, because this was so long ago when we talked about this, where I think earlier in the film, where he said in this original script, he's told them to kill her, kill the officials. Like, he was explicitly told them to kill them, but that was taken out, I think. And this is another example of that, where, in the previous scenes, Padme wants to go, or Amidala wants to go back to Naboo, and everyone's saying, "Oh no, they're going to force you to sign the treaty, or they're going to destroy you, or both." And now we have confirmation of that. And I like that. It kind of shows you that, he just thinks it's going to be a simple thing. Like, Sidious thinks, as we do at this point, that Amidala is just coming back just to be with her people. He doesn't know that she's going to fight. He doesn't, and so he thinks, "Oh, she's just, I know her. Just find her, kill her, get her out of the way. She served her purpose." He doesn't suspect that she's going to put up a fight in a really, really big way. So, and of course, Darth Sidious thinks, "Is the planet secure?" He asks him, "Is the planet secure?" And Gunray says, "Yes, my lord. We have taken over the last pockets of primitive life forms. We are in complete control of the planet now." So, as far as we know, we're like, "Oh, that's it for the Gungans." Then we think that all the Gungans have been wiped out. So, there is no help for the Queen at this point. Or even if we were like way ahead of the story and thought maybe they're going to unite the Gungans and the Naboo together, it sounds like the Gungans have been wiped out. And that's what that scene with Jar Jar, we're like, "Oh, there's nobody there." And so at first it seems like, "Oh no, we wanted their help, but now they're not there." And but it's revealed that they've been hiding. But anyway.
Yeah, that's good. I also find it interesting how Palpatine talks about, he gives the impression that he's just completely in control of the Senate, and I appreciate that, because he really essentially will be for the whole prequel trilogy. Well, all of it until the very end, I guess. But it's just that it's such a good Phantom moment, because if this is your first time watching it, it's like, how is he controlling the Senate? who is this guy? You know, he's just this phantom moving around. And if you don't know, he's the same guy as Senator Palpatine. Just blow your mind. Like, wait, what? What's going on? But we just saw a new chancellor come in. You know, like, how are you in control of the Senate? You know, things like that. But it's kind of fun. And I also love the fear, again, just in the Neimoidians. When he tells him Darth Maul's coming. I can't remember Newt Gunray's assistant name there, but he just looks at him like, what? He's coming here? And then he says, a Sith here? So I just like that fear. You just really get this, again, just the evil, dark sense of Palpatine. He's this phantom in the shadows. He's in complete control. He's terrifying to even his own guys. You know, it's just a cool build up to his dark side-ness, I guess.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, and of course his theme is played here too. Again, that's one of the other themes we have in the movie is Sidious's theme. It's the first one we ever heard was in the very first scene was his theme, and because he was in control then, and he seems to be in control now. So that's music underscores the power he seems to have over the situation, right? Yeah, and it's true what you say about the Senate thing because he, now we have confirmation that of what the Queen suspected in previous scenes where she says, the Senate isn't going to do anything. I feel like, what'd she say? It's clear to me now that the Republic no longer functions or the Senate no longer functions. I can't remember exactly what she says, but, and, she's like, and Palpatine was like, oh, there's going to be a vote and I promise I'll be chancellor. I'll fix the situation. Yeah. She's like, yeah, I don't have any confidence in that. And now maybe because the audience knows at this point that whoever this dark side guy, whoever this Darth Sidious is, that he is manipulating the Senate, and now we get confirmation of her suspicions that I'm going to make sure that things. I will see to it that in the Senate things stay as they are, and so it's like, well, so we're absolutely nail in the coffin. We're not getting any help from the Senate anytime soon. And I'm sending Darth Maul, the guy that almost killed Qui-Gon, right? So at this point, like that's a huge threat. He's like, I'm sending them to, and he says, there's a line that's in the script that's not in the movie. He says, I'm sending Darth Maul to join you. He will deal with the Jedi. And as the audience, we're like, oh, that's what that, you didn't need that line to heal deal with the Jedi because the audience knows what Darth Maul was. Like, that's the guy who almost totally ran his sword through Qui-Gon Jinn. Unfortunately, he will do that. But we don't know that yet. But it's like, oh, this is a huge threat to the Jedi. The two, guys who have a chance of defending the Queen, they have a good chance of getting taken out now. So now we're scared. Now we know that Darth Maul's going to be there. If it was just battle droids, we know that the battle droids aren't a threat. We've been talking about that since the very first podcast. But Darth Maul is a threat. He's a huge threat. And now so that kind of sets up the anxiousness in the audience. Like, that's what the Senate. That's what the scene does, right? Again, every scene has to give you new information. Otherwise, it's redundant. And it's not going to be included in the movie. So, what's happening here is they're setting up how bleak the situation is for the Queen and the Jedi, and that's Darth Maul. The Senate's not going to help. The Gungans are taken out. They don't. So the good guys aren't going to get any help from them, and I'm giving you extra help with Darth Maul, and so it's tipping the scales against our heroes.
Yeah, I like that. Just like the looming threat. Yeah, that he is. Because as a kid, that just went right over my head. I was like, "Oh, cool! There's Darth Maul." I was just really excited about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Or there's Palpatine. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was
and then walking really robot's cool.
Yeah. I was never really aware of like, oh, here's a big threat. So yeah, it's just cool to see.
Yeah, and I guess one quick little fun detail. It's not like really tied to the story or anything, but just kind of close the loop on this scene was that so it's filmed at this all these throne room scenes were filmed at the Caserta Palace in Italy. And so in the shot of all the three villains kind of walking and talking in the background, there's these sculptures on the wall, and they each they each have different names. So the one in the middle, I can't talk. The middle, the one in the center and the middle, pick a word, middle or center, not middle. The one in the center is called the Royal Majesty. The one on the left is called Merit, and the one on the right is called Truth. And so that basically the idea was when they built this palace, that these are basically they represent the virtues that a good ruler should possess. And so it's appropriate that they would shoot this location for the throne room, right, where the Queen is. These are the ideas that she's aspiring to be. And then I like that just in the foreground, that's in the background, in the shadows, but in the foreground, in this darkened throne room, you have these three examples of what a ruler should not be. You have, greedy, cowardly, and manipulative, right? So I just, I don't know if I doubt that they looked into that when they chose the location, but just
Yeah.
in my research, I noticed that and made me think of like, oh yeah, it's like it's important to recognize that these three figures are in this throne room, like the place that was the seat of wisdom and beauty and life has just been infested with these guys, and they shouldn't be there. Like, why does this scene take place in the throne room? Because it's this. Oh, you should be like, oh no, they've taken over. Like every time we've seen them, the viceroy in his moving mechanical chair and taking over it and just being the worst ruler ever. It's like, oh, okay, the queen was not as good as she could have been, but like now we actually have evil taking over, and we really need her to come back and step up and be the leader she needs to be. So just in my research, finding out what those sculptures were and finding out about the location they shot in just kind of, again, brought some new context where I thought, oh yeah, there's a reason this scene is shot in the throne room. There's a reason we always see these guys there, is because we need to be reminded of what's been lost and what needs to be regained.
That's cool. I wonder if he did that, how intentional that was. That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, maybe someone told him what the what the statues represented, or maybe just, I'm sure he just thought it looked pretty. It's like, oh, it's a really nice location, or really has that grandeur. But anyway, I just fun little nerdy thing just to
that's awesome
mention. And the last thing I'll say is what was it? Oh, the so you mentioned before how the spires of the Jedi Temple look very similar to the towers of the Hagia Sophia, the Blue Mosque in Istanbul. And I remember we were talking about this, and in the back of my head, I'm like, I know I've heard them mention that place before in like the making of this movie. Where did I find that? And actually, the domed buildings of Naboo. So for those who can't see, or Nathan has the Naboo background on Zoom. He has a little picture of Naboo, and so the blue domed buildings of the Naboo Palace were directly inspired by the mosque.
Very good.
Yeah, and this is cool because the name Hagia Sophia means holy wisdom, which again is appropriate since Naboo represents the wisdom and life in the story, right? So just another cool little architectural thing, kind of helps tell the story. So just want to mention that before we move on.
Boy, it's easy to see. I mean, once if you've seen that temple at all, boy, you can see it. That's cool, and I like that. I mean, it's neat too that George, I mean, just aesthetically, he's looking for stuff, right? Like, oh, that looks cool, but there's just so much more meaning in all these things, you know? Like, it's not just that looks neat, I'm sure there are some of those for sure. I mean, like, I like that color, that works,
Yeah.
But I just think that that's really neat, like that connection right there. Like, we're gonna make Naboo and his palace look like the Temple of Wisdom, holy wisdom. That's because that's the point. That's what we want these people to look like. It's not just I like the dome look, whatever. But yeah, that's neat. I like the intentionality. It's everything's preaching a message, right? Everything, whether it's the night sky or the building or the clothes or whatever. And we'll get into that in this next scene with the queen and her clothes, her wardrobe changed again. So, which I'm already excited to hear your thoughts on that. I don't know if you're ready to transition over to that scene, but I'm excited for all these.
Yeah, let's definitely jump into it. But yeah, I was just gonna say, like, even though, George definitely puts in thought into these big visual pieces, like the palace, like the Jedi Temple, right? We talked about that, where there are some things in the background where he's just like, okay, I don't care, that looks cool, we'll go with that. Like, he doesn't have to put thought into every little character and their costume in the background if they're just an extra. If it looks right, it works. But when he wants to put, there's something that's really big and important, like a location or a character or a planet, he's going to put some thought into, okay, what is the theme? What am I conveying here? How does this help tell the story? So anyway, I totally agree with you. That's all I'm saying there. Yeah, but yes, we can jump into the next scene. What do you?
Another space shot.
What do you
think? I like how George does that. All those space transitions like that. So again, just real quick, but I'm assuming he put this scene in there. Number one, he likes that transition, like we talked about with the fast pace. Here's the ship flying through space. But I also I'm assuming he put it in there to show Anakin's just technical brilliance. Just how mechanical he is, because the whole scene is him jumping in right away, understanding. Oh, I know how that works. Those two control the pitch, right? And then the captain just looks at him like, wow, yeah, it does. I just like that. It's just because Obi-Wan said way back in episode 4, right? the best pilot I've ever known. I don't remember the exact
Mhm.
line, but yeah. And then you see that. Well, we saw it in the pod race. We see it here. He's getting it, and I'm assuming George is setting that up to come with what he's going to do here at the Naboo fighters. So it's just a neat thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what George said about this scene, was that it was there to establish that Anakin has an aptitude for piloting, and to explain how he's able to kind of get a handle on the Naboo starfighter later on in the movie. Because on Tatooine, it's this 9-year-old, 10-year-old kid can drive a race car, cool. But now we're gonna put this little kid in like an F-22 jet, fighter jet. Okay, can he fly that? Like, that's a little harder to buy. And so this is kind of there to show that Anakin he's learning, he's absorbing, and he has a knack for, like, actually, I think this controls the pitch, right? And Rick Lee's like, yep, totally. Yep. So totally nailed it. And actually, one thing I want a little bit of filmmaking technique I want to bring up here. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you have the movie in front of you and I don't. That shot of the Naboo ship flying, from what side of the screen does it start, and what side does it exit? Is it left? Is it moving left to right, or is it moving right to left?
Let me back up just to here. I think it goes right to left. Yep, right to left.
Okay. So I can't confirm this because I haven't really looked at every single shot of this, but if I know Lucas's attention to detail, especially when it comes to filmmaking, and his really, really good technique, there's an idea that when you show a character moving, usually in a vehicle, or it can be running, that if it's moving right to left now, then I'm assuming that when they left Naboo and were heading to Coruscant, the ship was moving left to right. Or the opposite. And that's something a lot of movies get wrong, where it helps the audience just to know, okay, we're going back home now, so, or we're going to someplace else and we're heading back. So you just want that motion to be consistent. They're always moving, left to right, left to right, left to right, and then when they turn around, right to left, right to left, right to left, or vice versa. You got to just pick one. But just to maintain that consistency, we talked about in the pod race, where he always made sure that there was a forward progression to all the pods, so he filmed them from a similar side. They're all moving left to right, because the track is this big loop. But if you start having them going in the opposite direction, you start shooting them right to left, it looks like they're going backwards, and so the audience might not get that. The audience might not know it's a loop. So it's just to make it, again, visually simple and clear and visually effective. He's always thinking about that. He's always got the visuals in mind. So just little things like that, of having the ship move in the right direction, whether it's going towards the center of the galaxy or back, or towards Naboo.
That's cool.
Now I can't confirm that, because there are times where you make changes just because it doesn't need to be that way. It's just an extra thing that a lot of directors add. So I don't want to absolutely say that he does that, because I haven't looked at the other examples of that in the film, but I'm pretty sure I've seen him do that in other places, in other movies. And so I want to guess. I want to say that I'm pretty sure he would do that. That's something he would be conscious of. And if he did break that rule, there'd be a specific reason for it. And actually, you said it's moving from right to left here. Okay. Now I'm wondering. I think I'm trying to picture the shot of it leaving Naboo, leaving the blockade. Maybe it is moving right to left. I don't know. If it's kind of coming right at you, it doesn't really matter. If it's going in any way left to right, it changes. But all I'll say is that it's a filmmaking. Maybe what I should say is that's just a filmmaking technique. Maybe Lucas uses it, maybe he doesn't. I should have done more research before I brought this up. I should have verified that. Maybe I'll cut this out. Anyway, that's anyway. Whatever. That's we can go inside the ship now to the Queen's chamber and talk about that.
Yeah, I will point out just that scene. There's that Anakin and Rick Lee talking. Rick Lee, thank you. I couldn't remember his name. But I think we may have talked about this the first time we saw this, but it's just so interesting to me that George went with the interior design, or at least the lighting is so red. I mean, it's just lit up with red light, especially in the background. And I just find that so interesting, because I remember even as a kid, this scene always came across to me as eerie, and I don't know.
Oh, interesting.
If that's what he wanted to do, or it was just me as a kid. Because, like that look that Rick Lee gives him is kind of shock. And it seems like there's a little bit of suspicion, like, okay. And then it's just, Anakin is totally backlit with red, and it's all dark. And I've just always wondered what George was doing there. Or he just thought, this is just the dashboard lighting up the back, or whatever. But
interesting.
Yeah, it's always felt eerie to me. It still does to this day as I watch it. I'm like, wow, it just feels eerie. Yeah. And the light is shining up on them, and that I know that's supposed to maybe just come from the dashboard, but that always gives that it's like what you do with the flashlight when you're telling a scary story. You shine it up on your face.
Yeah.
And that gives that eerie. So I'm just curious on what George did or what he had in mind here. Maybe he had nothing in mind, but it's an interesting choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never found that scene eerie. That's interesting. I can see how you could see it that way, though. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the cockpit is red in every single shot. And they're kind of reddish, orangish, and there's that.
Yeah,
that's a constant color throughout the Naboo, right? Amidala has that red gown. The handmaidens are kind of fiery orange and yellow. So I'm not sure if that was the idea, that just to keep it consistent with that color scheme, or if it is meant to evoke more an emotional, psychological, like, oh, this is creepy, or I don't feel like there's anything eerie about the scene itself on paper that they would want to enhance visually. I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I honestly haven't really thought too much about the visuals of this scene in terms of the lighting and the color there. So maybe there is something there. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. And it's true. You're right. I can picture, even though I don't have the movie in front of me, I can picture that in my mind, having the underlit faces of Riccoli and Anakin there. Yeah, maybe it's just from the dashboard. I don't know. That's interesting. I'd have to look at that again and see what I see. But
yeah, I'm curious. I don't know. And again, it could be one of those things where I'm just reading into it too much. But isn't Darth Vader's TIE fighter red too? Like it's lit up red in Episode 4. Isn't it kind of a red tint to it?
So I think you're right. Yeah, I think so. If I remember right. Yeah.
I don't know if there's any connection there whatsoever, but it reminds me of that. My mind automatically goes back to is just this ominous red lit.
Well, for sure, what we could definitely say is that Lucas did intend. There's some reason for that color, because color is such a huge part of filmmaking, and we know that Lucas really likes to use it to tell a story. So there's definitely a reason why it's it's red inside the TIE Fighter and not in the Millennium Falcon or the X-wing, right? And there's probably a very good reason why it's red here in the middle of this ship, and one doesn't really come to mind, but I'm sure there is one. Like, because again, everything has to be. It wasn't like a location. Well, that's just how Naboo ships cockpits are. When you go to Texas, they rent one from this guy and they shoot in it for a day. And it's like, no, that's how you do cars and planes in the real world. But they had to build this, and so they have to put thought into it. They're forced to put thought into it. So you might as well have it represent something. So I don't know. So I'm sure there was thought put into it. Absolutely, we just don't know what it is.
Don't know what. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, this is interesting. I've always found that interesting. So yeah, but then you get to the I don't know where the queen is, wherever her room is here, and it's totally lit up, right? I mean, it's normal, just lighting.
I don't know,
bright light and stuff. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, you want to talk about this scene real quick, and then I better call it.
Okay.
Just with Qui-Gon and Panaka and the queen.
Yep. Let's see. So, read a bit from the script here. We have Sabe Erite. I've been saying that wrong this whole time. Eirtae. Irte. Anyway, they stand behind Queen Amidala. So that's the handmaidens as she talks with Qui-Gon and Captain Panaka. Captain Panaka says, "The moment we land, the Federation will arrest you and force you to sign the treaty." And Qui-Gon says, "I agree. I'm not sure what you hope to accomplish by this." So again, up to this point, everyone's like, why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense. Like they're gonna kill you, or they're gonna use you to get their way, one or both, And because Panaka doesn't know the half of what's gonna happen. Like, as we learned before, the Federation has gone to Plan B, and they're skipping the treaty at this point. They're just gonna assassinate her. And Qui-Gon's also wondering what good returning will do if they're just gonna get captured again. So even he's kind of like, it's so funny because she's about to pull a Qui-Gon move in this scene, and Qui-Gon's like, I'm not sure what your plan here is. Like, he's in the dark. He's kind of lost along with everyone else. And she says very, very defiantly, very, very powerfully, "I'm going to take back what's ours."
Yeah,
which is very, very different from, "We must continue to rely on negotiation." Like, I will not condone a course of action that will lead us to war. Like, she's changed so much. She's come so far. But Captain Panaka in the script says, "There are only 12 of us, Your Highness. We have no army." So actually, we get a number. So it's 12 versus however many hundreds of battle droids, thousands of battle droids. Yeah. But and Qui-Gon says, "I cannot fight a war for you, Your Highness. Only protect you." So a little slightly different than the way he says in the movie. And we learn that the Jedi say, "Hey, you can protect her, but don't. We can't go to war. That's not a thing that we can do. That's not what Jedi do." And Qui-Gon's, he's a Jedi. He's like, "I'm not a warrior. I don't fight wars. I'm I'm trying to keep the peace, and that's the opposite of what war is. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll protect you. That's my mandate, but I don't know what. Yeah, I'm not. It's not me and my apprentice can't hold off a whole army of battle droids. So
Mm-hmm.
Padme's finally making the hard decision here. So this is
Mm-hmm.
where she's finally chosen to be an activist rather than a pacifist, and so she's learned to do what's necessary, even if it's painful, right? Because this goes against what she would like. She doesn't want people to die. She doesn't want war. Like, no one does. No one wants to get involved in these things, but
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't want her people to die. People are already dying, and so she's got to do something. And so she makes a very, very tough decision. But it's great to see her character change.
Yeah,
And
boy. Mm-hmm. Big change.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you know? Is there any? Has George said anything about the costume change here? This is one of the first times we see her in like purple. It
Yeah.
almost seems like there's a mesh between where she was with the black, right, and the
Mm-hmm.
red. It seems like
Oh,
I don't
interesting.
know. I don't know if he's trying to tell us something with that, or what
Yeah,
the wardrobe is about here.
yeah. I don't know. This is my favorite outfit of hers in the movie. I always thought
Mm.
this one was cool looking. I always liked this one, and
Mm-hmm,
I was
mm-hmm,
trying to figure out who designed it because usually you can kind of trace back in the concept art like who
mm.
drew what. And let's see. I have it written down here. A lot of, if not, I don't know if all of them were, but most of her gowns I think were designed by Ian McCaig, one of the artists on the
Mm,
and
mm,
we saw a lot of his drawings when we went to see the
mm,
costume exhibit that you and
mm.
I went to. And but I'm not sure about this one. I'm not
So
sure.
cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he designed this one or not. Obviously all of the costumes were designed or created and realized by
Mm-hmm,
Trisha Bigar and her team, and she worked on all the prequels, and of course they did an incredible job. But yeah, that's a good point. It was the first time kind of seeing her in this purple color, and it's a
mm-hmm,
good point. It's much cooler. It's not quite the red, the bright and like fiery red, but now it's more subdued, and
mm-hmm.
um it seemed, I don't know. I don't know. I really like it though. I always thought it looked cool. I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
don't. I wish I could find more information on it. So I'm not sure what he
Mm-hmm.
was thinking, but yeah. But I'm glad you brought it up because yeah, I do like It has a very striking look. I do like this. Like I said, it's my favorite look that she has in the film.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I'm looking at it. There in the what do you call this book? The visual guide, the visual dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
It has a page of all her different outfits from the movie, and
Mm-hmm.
just looking at them and comparing them, it's just so strikingly different. You know, I mean, she hasn't been in a color like this yet, and there's not really the sharp edges of like all the other, other
Mm-hmm.
outfits. This one's very soft, very flowy.
Yeah.
The other ones are very busy. You know, they have all the sewings, all the patching, all that kind of stuff on. This one doesn't. It's just like smooth, silky
Mm-hmm.
purple. I don't know. It's just really different. So I'm just
Yeah,
really
it's true.
curious on what George is trying to do. And it's also interesting. It just looks like her face isn't as white. You know, it's just not that solid white. It's more of a color to it.
Oh, really
And then
interesting.
at the very end too, when we see her at the celebration, it's not as white. It's more of a see-through almost. But I don't know. I'm just curious on what he's trying to tell us there. So
Interesting.
I don't know if we're
Yeah, I
just
don't
coming
know.
in, seeing Padme come into who she is, and less of the naive queen, I guess. I don't know, but
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
I'm curious on what he's telling us. It's so different. His outfit's just strikingly different from the
Mm-hmm.
others. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of just spitballing here, but I know purple is associated with royalty. It's a
Mm-hmm.
royal color. It was a very expensive dye back in the day, so only rich people could, presumably the king or the queen, could afford to dye their robes purple.
Mm-hmm.
And she is becoming the ruler here. She's kind of becoming the queen that
Mm-hmm.
she needs to be here, and it is a darker. We first saw it when she was on Coruscant. Still, it's her travel outfit basically, and so um, we were still on Coruscant. It was nighttime. It was dark still, so it might just be a holdover from that potentially. But um, yeah, I don't. That's all the only thoughts I can really conjure up about that. It's not There's not much to go on, at least for me. I haven't been able to find anything, but it is a interesting. Just the fact that it's purple, it means as that's again like we talked about with the cockpit, color is intentionally chose purple. Purple. It chose purple for this
Uh-huh.
scene for some reason because it doesn't show up anywhere else. So I just don't know what that
Mm-hmm.
is. Man, I'm whiffing on all these color questions here and all these, but
Yeah.
Oh well.
Well, I'm curious. Yeah, I just wondered. It's also interesting to me just looking at all these. She constantly has some kind of diadem on her forehead,
Mm.
and I never really quite noticed that before. There's always some kind of gold at the top of her head. It's different
It's a
every
crown,
time,
yeah, basically. Yeah. She's
but
got
yeah,
the
just showing that royalty. Yeah.
yeah, I know this specific outfit. It's got the Naboo royal symbol on it,
Mm-hmm.
embossed on it. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, it's true. That's a good point. I never thought about it.
Yeah.
She is the queen. She always, even though she has these very elaborate costumes that we don't really identify with or associate with traditional like king queen outfits. She always
Mm-hmm.
does have that diadem. She always has that crown,
Mm-hmm.
that sign of royalty. It's true. It's true. I never caught that.
No,
It's a good
neither.
point.
Just looking at this, like, wow, it's always there. Yeah. Huh. Okay. Um. Well, I also like how she brings up Jar Jar. And
Yep.
this is the first time we really see her so confident. I mean, well, not maybe the first time, but we're starting to see it. This is
Mm-hmm.
Padme. We're starting to see Padme come out as we'll know her from the rest of the prequels. And
Mm-hmm.
it's fun. We kind of got that first glimpse last time we saw her, where she made this decision, and now we're seeing her like, okay, this is what we're gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
She's got this plan, and we see her pull towards Jar Jar, like, hey, come here, and he's like, what, me? I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah, the audience gets to we were finally let in on her scheme, on her plan.
Mm-hmm.
And again, yeah, it's just, I love how everyone kind of looks back at Jar Jar, and even Jar Jar is like, me? Are you sure? Like, someone's asking, cares about someone's picking me out of the room, and to give me someone to talk to. And she says, I need your help. And of course, I'm sure everyone, that's where the scene stops, but I'm sure there's like, Captain Panaka probably threw a fit after that. He's like, what? Why? And I love that. You know, Jar Jar and Padme's relationship started in that scene where she's cleaning R2, and he showed up, and she's like, oh, you're like, probably it's like the first Gungan she ever met, really, or saw, like we talked about, probably. And just that now at this point, now she's calling on him to help her save the planet, and he's such an unlikely source for that, but it's just tracing their relationship from that moment till now is just kind of cool to see, like, what a huge payoff. Before, it was just these two characters that at that time we didn't know who either of them were. We thought they're both insignificant. Like, they don't have lightsabers. I don't care. They're not cool. But then now it's like, all these like super pivotal. They are super important characters to the story. They are the two figureheads of these two societies that need to join forces or die, and so it's really they're the ones who are, the stakes are theirs. Like, this is their planet. We kind of forget that Jar Jar is going to lose his home if this, just like the Queen will, just like the Naboo will, if this all goes south. So I just like that. But yeah, that line about the Gungan army, and this seemed like a throwaway line a couple scenes ago when she was in Palpatine's office, and when Jar Jar was like, "Oh, we have a grand army," and when we might have missed it as an audience, so we're surprised just as surprised as Jar Jar is that someone is asking him for help. But here Amidala she's doing what Qui-Gon did, right? She's trusting her fate to a character no one really thinks much of. That's what Qui-Gon did with Anakin, and now we'll see it pays off just like it did with Anakin. So it's just a great, to see her learn the lesson of her kind of unofficial master, Qui-Gon.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. So then let's land the ship here, man. What what do you think of or what I should say, what does George think of this next scene, bringing the ship in? I mean, they acknowledge, like, hey, there's a battleship on our scope, and Obi-Wan says, well, they probably spotted us. We don't have much time. Why do that? What's his goal in telling us that? How can they sneak on? Like, it just seemed like to get off the planet was so perilous, but getting on planet was like not a problem. So is George trying to tell us they're permitting them to land? Like, they're trying to do this, or what's going on here?
Yeah, so I'll read the script here because it has a little bit of extra information. But so the Naboo cruiser, I can't talk. The Naboo cruiser heads toward the lush green planet. There's only one Federation battle cruiser orbiting. Obi-Wan and Captain Panaka spotted on the view screen. Panaka says the blockade's gone, and Obi-Wan says the war is over. No need for it now. Rico Lee says, I have one battleship on my scope. And this is where the scene picks up. So it's redundant. That's why those first two lines were kind of got rid of, because they're redundant and unnecessary. Because Rico Lee says, I have one battleship on my scope. And Obi-Wan says, a droid control ship. So the Trade Federation's arrogance, right? They got rid of the blockade, which allowed the Queen's ship, which has no weapons, right, to make it safely onto the planet. So they could have just blasted it out of existence, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is implied. You do see that in the movie. There's only one. The blockade is gone. So there's only one ship there.
Huh.
So
I never noticed that.
Yeah, and so really, and so
wow.
And so, but then the question is, okay, why do they leave one ship there? Like, why not get rid of them all? If why not just land them all? Why do they still need to ship up in space? And that's because Obi-Wan lets us know. That's why his line is there, is to let us know that it's a droid control ship. So it's our first time hearing about that kind of thing. We didn't know the droids were controlled by the ship until this point. So that now we know what. So that it's George is telling us, here's what we need to do to take down the droids. He's giving us information that'll help us figure out what's happening in the end of the movie. So again, each scene has to give you new information. Otherwise it doesn't need to be there. So this scene is telling you, okay, there's one ship. So that's how we're getting to the planet. There's only one ship, so you can sneak past them. There's not a blockade in our way. And that ship is there that controls the droids. And so if you take it on that ship, you'll take down the droids. And so that's how when Padme starts to explain her plan later on, the audience is up to speed and goes, oh yeah, that droid control ship, that one ship that's left, we need to go. There needs to be some space element of this attack that we can send some fighters up there and take it down. So it's just filling the audience, just bring them up to speed on what they'll need to know for the rest of the movie.
Wow, man, I feel like that would have been really helpful to me. Just to know, like, oh, the fleet's gone. Like, that never occurred to me until you read that. Like, oh, man.
Yeah, every time you see the shot of the space in the movie, there's only one battleship.
Wow, nope, never picked that up. Jeez.
Again, that's why we do it.
Tell us these things.
Yeah, as long as you don't tell me to. As long as you're not telling me to shut up or shut down.
Yeah, that's right. Plug the professor in the back.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why we do these. That's why I love going through these things, because there's usually some obvious things. Like the fact that you pointed out to me, I can't believe I was so dumb not to realize the fact that every time the Queen, because I used to think like, oh, they just change. It was just a movie thing, just to trick the audience. They're just changing between Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman, just randomly, just to throw you off. It's like, no, every time, no, she's hiding. Like it's a story reason. Like every time Padme's around, it's Keira Knightley or Sabe or whatever. I was like, oh, duh. Like it's so obvious. I never thought about that. To me, it was just like, oh, it's just random. Doesn't matter who it is. They're just throwing you off. So there's all these obvious things that we always miss because we've seen these movies too many times that we just don't see them. We don't see them anymore. That's the problem.
Yeah.
This is helping us actually watch them and see them with new eyes.
Yeah, it is. It's so much fun. And who knows, 10 years from now, we'll come back and do it again and be like, oh my goodness, how did we miss all this? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Totally.
I hear you. That's the beauty of all this kind of stuff. It's fun. So anyway, continue on.
I think that's all I got for this. It's a short scene, and Obi-Wan says we haven't much time. So that's, again, just it's letting the audience know, we're getting down to it. Things are going to start happening soon. So it's a very, very quick, efficient scene just to give the audience some information, and then we jump into the swamp. That's the next scene, right?
Yeah, that's it. Nice. And I always love the landing. I'm a ship fan. I love that. So I love seeing the ships just come in and just those quick little things. I mean, he doesn't have to do those. He doesn't have to show us all this stuff. He doesn't have to show us the ship coming in. He doesn't have to show us the ship landing or anything like that, going to hyperspace. But he does, and I love it. I've always loved it.
Me too. Yep. It's always fun. I never get bored just watching it land. George just knows vehicles are fun to watch, and we enjoy it. We enjoy watching them.
Yeah, they really are. So, I mean, they really don't serve the story that much. I mean, a little bit, I guess, to show they're going from point A to point B. But man, I just love them.
It's true really that shot of the ship landing, I guess it lets you know they're hiding. They're not parking in the middle of the city. They're, lets you know, okay, they're going to go into the forest. They're going to go into the swamps a bit. So they're hiding, much like the Trade Federation. It's like very opposite. It's like interesting. We have a different invasion now. We have a different infestation. It's like a reverse of what happened at the beginning of the movie, where we had this huge army landing in the forest to attack the city. And as the exact same thing's happening, the city's going to get attacked, but now it's just one ship with a small, group of heroes hiding in this exact same forest. They're basically just pulling the exact same trick on the Trade Federation that they pulled at the beginning.
Wow. That's cool. What a contrast, huh? To show the odds, like one ship versus all those that huge invasion army at the beginning. Wow. Yeah, what a big change. That's cool. I like it, man. I love these small little details. It's so much fun to slow down and go through these and just think through these things and ask these questions. Hear what the George himself, the maker, has to say. I really enjoyed it. It's just been a blast. So thank you as always, my friend. I love it.
Thank you.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed every single time as well. It makes my Saturdays so much more fun.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm excited because we're just about there to the big battle.
Yes.
Big third act here. Well, we've already started the third act, but yeah, just seeing the big battle come. I love the big battles. Every single movie. It's great. It's just edge of your seat the whole time.
Yeah, and this will be the most complicated. This will have the most moving pieces of any battle we'll cover, I think. There's 4 different storylines happening, I think, in this final, this last reel here of the movie, last 15 minutes. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, it'll be fantastic. So, well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. As always, thank you to all of you who listen to us. It's great. And are patient with us because we're still learning. We'll always be learning, right? That's what's fun. My grandma said, if you stop learning, you die. So there you go.
There you go. Totally.
That's an Oma quote.
Good advice. Yeah. All right, that's it for this episode. Join us in the next one as we continue our series on the Phantom Menace. As always, thanks for listening, and on to the next one.